Welcome to another episode of me rambling about random crap I've recently had ridiculous conversations about. Today, we'll be aggressively shoving 1950s educational philosophy into creative writing, because I do what I want, and I want to do something stupid. Specifically, we'll be looking at Bloom's taxonomy, this pyramid thing that sorts cognitive functions into seemingly linear hierarchy and implies that you need the lower ones before you can do the higher ones, which, no. I can evaluate that vaccines work without understanding how they work, because I can look at the prevalence of polio over the last 45 years and go, wow, number go down. So evaluation is not inherently harder than understanding, and I don't necessarily need to understand to evaluate. You can say the same thing for evaluation and creation. I know a lot of good writers, and for quite a few of them, if you ask how they do it, the answer is, I don't know. Vibes, I guess. That's because that's just how they think. Their brains process everything as narratives, so they're good at creating narratives. Now, obviously, you can also become a good writer through studying how narratives work and applying that to your own writing. You don't have to be one of those magic narrative-brained people. I've also met good writers who are terrible, terrible critics because they never learned how to evaluate any work that wasn't their own. And I've met great critics who are terrible writers because they have a deep technical understanding of the craft and an appreciation for it, but they find absolutely no joy in actually writing. So when they do write, it comes out bland and stilted. I think you get my point by now. Learning is not linear, it's not hierarchical, and it certainly doesn't exist in discrete boxes. But this video isn't about that. This video is about putting everything in the square hole. I think Bloom's taxonomy can actually act as a really good model for character agency. Let's start with the assumption that our character knows absolutely nothing about the looming threat to their world. The threat, let's say, is that society runs on magic, which is typically used through artifacts that are imbued with arcane power by weaving magic through them using a spell loom. Except no one knows how to maintain spell looms. So when parts of them break, they have to be thrown away, and now you have less effective magic, because the spell loom is compromised. First level of Bloom's taxonomy, remembering/knowing. Our character has to actually be aware of the threat. I know, it's an insane concept. Someone give me a medal. I just figured out that you have to know that a problem exists to be able to work on the problem. Alright, level 2, understanding. Our character now knows that magic is slowly getting worse, and so everyone's quality of life is getting worse. Now they need to understand how the problem can be solved. In this case, they hear an old myth from their village about the first spell loom, which they've heard 1,000 times before, but this time, knowing the problem, they realize that there are some very specific technical details in the myth that really don't seem to serve the story. This leads our character to the realization that the means to repair the spell looms lies in the myths, legends, and folk tales around the world. Now they understand how to solve the problem. Which brings us to level 3, applying. Now that our character understands how to solve the problem, they go about applying that knowledge. They set out with a party of heroes to go collect folklore from every corner of the world. They need to convince various cultures to share their stories, which will probably involve immersing themselves in those cultures and respecting their traditions. Or like stabbing the evil king who stole the only copy of the foundational myth and returning it to the people it belongs to, then getting permission to make a copy of it. Whatever makes for a more dramatic story, or a more fun D&D session. The applying section probably takes the bulk of the story, but it doesn't get us to the end. No, we still have 3 stages to go. Level 4 comes next, analyzing. Our heroes who have applied their understanding of the problem now have to sift through all these stories they've collected for the tiny scraps of information about spell looms. They have to analyze every single line to determine what might be useful. Which leads us straight into level 5, evaluating. Because you thought it would be as easy as pulling out the information and then using it, didn't you? You fool. There are various contradictory accounts, and now they have to evaluate them all to figure out which are actually going to help them in their quest to save magic. And then finally, once they've evaluated all the information they collected, they can now synthesize that knowledge into techniques to repair and maintain spell looms, and maybe even create new ones. And that's level 6. They've done it. Our heroes have saved magic. Except now they're back at level 1 because they know how to fix spell looms, but no one else does. And once they realize that, they need to understand the scope of the problem. And there are so many spell looms around the world, and they can't repair and maintain all of them. So they have to apply their understanding to teach everyone else, then analyze and evaluate the progress of their students, and from that create a curriculum to maintain the spell looms forever. Okay, so that final arc probably wouldn't be in the story because it's unbelievably boring, but still, we did it. We used Bloom's taxonomy as a template for our protagonists' increasing agency to confront the looming threat to their world. Pun entirely intended. And that's all I had. Thanks for letting me waste a few minutes of your time. Like, comment, and subscribe, I guess.